very much.
For this
I owe
time,
you.
see if there's anybody who has public comment. Anybody in the public would like to make a comment?
Commissioner Nance, I know you're chairing the meeting. I would just like to request that we stray away from our 3-minute rule, because I know this is very important. Mr. McKee is probably one of the largest property owners out in the port, and probably one of the longest operating port facilities that we have. I don't want to be here all night, but at the same time.
Thank you, Chair.
If we could, please.
Commissioner, thanks for holding the work session. Had I known that there were going to be other people up here advocating this, I probably would have asked to have that opportunity too, but that's okay. I guess that's the way it is. So many things I wanted to address, and I don't want to keep you here all evening either. But let's, and I'm not going to go line by line here, but in truly Mickey's words rang so true when he closed by saying, "I know just enough to get us in trouble." And that truly is the case. The Port of Detroit is totally different than the Port of Muskegon, and I think John will agree with that. It's a different makeup with operators. The Maroon family's involved in that. They've got public ownership and private ownership, and a whole lot more traffic than we have. And they're where they are geographically, they're near manufacturing plants, better traffic lanes. It's a whole different animal. I understand why they want to amend this. But for it to, and remember, this is going to be statewide, and this isn't a one-size-fits-all type situation. And I would ask us to take a step back and get everyone on board, including the 2 port owners, active port owners. Consumers is no longer active, to get on board with the bill. We're not opposed to a port authority or a port district or a port something or other, but we are opposed when you can use public funds and form a public-private relationship with another company and compete with us. If we can address that, I think we've gone a long way. This doesn't address this. This sets us up for that. And why they took away the guarantee for the port operators to be on this board is beyond me. Especially considering Muskegon, there is no public dock except for the New Cross Ferry dock, which, by the way, Mark, we were fine with it. That was at the Mark dock. Remember, we hosted them the first year. Can you do it? Sure, we can do it. We'll be the backup. Great place. County Heritage Landing, no problem at all. That's a better place. It looks better than the Mark dock. Got it. Worked with you, okay? And that's what we want to do. We want to work with you. We don't want to have this shoved down our throat. And by the way, we're not the only ones now. Articles are coming out. Other dock owners around the state are becoming aware of this. It's no wonder that it passed 98-9 in the House, and now all of a sudden, the Senate committee, it's not even going to be passed this session. People are understanding it, just as this crowd, just as Mickey's starting to understand it, just as you guys are starting to understand it, and this gentleman, Mr. Baker, is it? I doubt very much that the people that you're associated with understand this bill. And those that are in favor of it are almost exclusively, there are some exceptions, almost exclusively government and quasi-government agencies. Sure, it's more for them. It's, if they get to expand their powers, why not? But it's at the expense of businesses, and you're going to scare businesses away from Muskegon, and you're going to, people aren't going to want to invest when they're fearful that the government is going to get together with another private company and compete against you, and that's what we need to address. A couple other things too. The definition, Mickey mentioned something about the water, it having to be on the water or something to that effect. That's the problem with this definition. It can be anywhere. It can be the middle of the county. It can be a farm. It doesn't have to be on the water. It's not water related. Look at that definition. That's one of the problems. The other thing too, if the taxing, okay, if you want to point to the Headley Amendment, why is the city is able to just recently go out and levy taxes for their lighting, okay? There's ways around that. So if you want to assure that the taxpayers need to pass a millage or need to vote on this, put it in the bill. It's a couple sentences, put it in the bill. Worse than that, it's been pointed out to me, is the ability to borrow. Go ahead, borrow. Go ahead, borrow. And when that thing sits there, and they're going by, they're going to look at all the county commissioners, all the politicians, and you guys borrowed, we owe on that thing, and it's just sitting there, which gets to the capacity. Guys, if you're going to go through this much energy, and if you're going to spend money, spend it on the current docks. What are you doing? Spend it on somebody else's property. And at least assure that it'll be spent on the current docks first. And by the way, I did talk with somebody today. There are ways around that, and there's a mechanism whereby this person's very bright, used to drafting things, and there is a mechanism that we can put into place where if there is a project that's proposed, the current dock owners get first crack at it. And he explained it, he wrote it out, I got it, and it was a little rough. But why not, while I'm saying is, let's take a step back, and why not think about mechanisms like that? Let's take a step back on so many things in this bill. As I said, the ability to borrow, the taxes, the definition, the makeup. There's a lot of things to step back on, and Commissioner Hughes did point out there's nothing to prevent the County of Grand Rapids and the City of Muskegon to get together and form a port authority and tax the city residents, both of Grand Rapids and the City of Muskegon, and bypass the county. So you talk about local control, I'm not sure if that's the case. The other thing too, the Grand Rapids folks ought to realize is because of the definition in here, they can set up the government can get together with a private developer and put up a hotel wherever they want in the esker to compete with wherever. And as I said, people need to get, sunlight needs to be shown on this bill. And thank God it's doing that. Mackinac Center today had an article on it. Detroit News is going to run an article on it. There's people are waking up. I want to address one other thing too, and it's as I said, the competition portion is what we're mostly concerned about. There should be some guarantees in here that whatever is set up, whatever is done with public taxpayer money, won't compete. Speaking of which, I've run on here. I don't want to keep you guys, but no one has pointed out to me, and I've asked many people, what can the Port Authority, what kind of funds can the Port Authority access besides levying taxes? What kind of funds can they access that Windsor Dick, the county, or the city, or the state can't already access? No one can answer that question. There's no need for this Port Authority to access more funds. I haven't, now maybe there is an answer out there. I'd love to hear it, because any type of funding, grants, blah, 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 you can do it right now, folks. And Mickey was wrong. John was right. You can form a Port Authority right now. Getting back to what Aaron said about this Martin study. Okay, fine. She said, her words, to promote and basically aid the current port owners. That's what that study proposed. And you can do that, market and aid the port owners. You can do that anyway. Let's do that. What do we need this funding mechanism for money to compete with us? Let's do that. Let's market it. I would tell you that it's a waste of money, but God bless them. If that's what you guys want to do, and if that's what they want to do, they want to market the heck out of it, go for it. That's great. So, in closing, I'd love it if anyone would ask any questions, please. I answered them all?
For me personally, I've had a chance to sit down and talk with you a couple different times.
Yeah.
So I've kind of already asked questions.
Yeah. So,
And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
pardon me?
Commissioner,
Yes, Commissioner.
I don't want to put words in your mouth because I know you've thought about this, but as I listen to it, I hear I'm opposed to a free market. Now, I know that's not what you mean. You want an equal footing,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
okay?
We don't want government money
I
to...
think what this is enabling legislation. But until we form something locally, it doesn't happen. And I think that's where this needs to do, is make it fit for Muskegon County, not a statewide entity. I mean, I think to say this is an end deal is ahead of ourselves.
Okay. And we can do this now, though. Remember, we can do this now. So if that's the case, then your administrator went and supported this, registered support, and testified on behalf of it. If that's the case, then why don't you stay neutral on it instead of supporting it? We want protections now, no offense, because we don't know who the commissioners are going to be. We don't know if they're going to change the bylaws. We don't know if the bylaws are going to have a supermajority. We're working on this now to make sure that everyone plays by the rules, so we keep our noses clean, so you guys keep your noses clean. Whoever the commissioners are after you, same thing with the city. Let's do it now instead of, I've heard too much of the trust thing, and that's a whole other part of this story. I've heard too much of the trust thing. No, we don't trust you. Sorry to do a Ted Fricano, but that's true.
Commissioner Wood.
Yes. We were all excited about establishing the court, but I was not aware of how much knowledge you may have about this, and is it too late now to sit down and talk about those areas?
Absolutely not. That's what we've been trying to do. We've wanted to sit down, but this was rushed through the House. No testimony except him and Aaron and one other party. The private entities didn't know about this. And absolutely, we'd love to sit down and we'd love to form something. There is something, absolutely, we can do something to help the current dock owners. And you know what, as I said, if something comes along and it makes sense somewhere else and doesn't compete with us, let's go for it. I love that, that's great. But the other thing too that we ought to consider is, and this whole other line of thinking is to really, are we going to have a successful port here? No, we won't. And I can give you names, and if, almost all you need is common sense. Look at our geography, look at the lack of manufacturing, look at the traffic lanes. The ones in Grand Rapids, with standardized containerization, that's why we don't have the ships coming in like we did in the 40s and 50s, because the 60s was the beginning of taking off of standardized containerization. They put them on rail to the East Coast, beats us every time. There are some exceptions, windmill parts. Yeah, bigger, you can't put those on containers. We're not going to be the bustling port that people dream of. As I said, it's going to be a white elephant. But you know what, sometimes, and as I said to somebody, let them do it. Let them do it. It's going to be really embarrassing. And go ahead, if you guys want to do it, go ahead. It'll be really embarrassing. Here's the interesting thing. It's not going to hurt us because we average less than one commercial cargo ship a year. Okay, so it's not going to hurt us. So you may actually say, well, why are you opposed to it? Because I'm afraid down the road it could hurt us. A project comes along, perfect for the Mark Dock, perfect for the consumer's property. Well, wait a minute, it's a private-public entity over the consumer's party. Let's bring it over there. Mark Dock, hey, we've been paying taxes. We've been here since 1933. We can take this thing. So that's what concerns us right now. Hey, knock yourself out, guys. Build your dock. God bless you. It's going to be a real embarrassment. So, getting to my other point, I see Kathy Evans and Mark Evans here. Have we thought about moving the campground over there? Have we thought about a boat launch? That's at the mouth of the river, environmentally sensitive, ecologically sensitive. Do we want to transform ourselves into a boat fishing mecca? I mean, maybe that's the best way to go. A green space, instead of hardening the shores concrete, how about softening them? How about promoting that? How about making Muskegon the fishing capital of the state? I'm just saying, those are things we should think of. The other thing I've been talking to Jonathan Wilson about, much more real, but a lot of work, is a shipbuilding or ship repair facility. We're very unique in that respect, in that we've got two operators, ourselves and Andre. Between us control about 10 or 12 ships. Where those go in the winter for their work, for their layup, and work where they go every 5 years, which is usually a couple $1 million per ship, we can control where they go. So a partnership with us, something like that might make sense. You talk about jobs. Marinette, 500 to 600 full-time, good paying jobs. You talk about working with MCC. You talk about skilled trades. My goodness, if jobs is what you want, that's the way to go, rather than a cargo facility that maybe will have 20 people there. And probably, if we get the Grand Rapids folks involved, a pass-through, and everything's going to Grand Rapids. It won't anyway, for reasons I explained. It's crazy. You come up with a company, I'm listening to this, I'm sorry, I'm going nuts. You come up with a company or two or three or four, and do you know a cargo ship contains 3,500 units per ship? Anyway,
Max,
there's my frustration. Okay. Yes, sir.
let me share something here, because I've been really thinking about this a lot more, and especially what I heard today is really important. What we're trying to do is change an existing law so that we can work with all of the ancillary businesses that comes with this port. It's not just about the port itself too. And that's my concern, is that, Muskegon has a great port, period. The whole thing is all of that lake out there, including that big channel. And when you look at the possibilities, I mean, you're saying 1% now, but if we get a port authority, we build on it, and next thing you know, you're up to 10%, you just went up 100% in what you've been doing. And I think that you're right. I think what we need to do is look at this as a state bill, and then what we need to do is concentrate on how we're gonna build this Muskegon authority, if we decide to do that. We haven't even done it yet, so we're not really doing it yet. But if that's what we decide to do, then I think that we all need to sit down, and I do think that with your time here and your dedication to Muskegon County, you should be able to have an important say on that, and we should look at what we can do to protect you. But that has to be hashed out together as a community, and I think that's one of the biggest backdraws to this community, is we have to continue to work together. And what we do is we throw up walls and we shut each other out, and then everything breaks down. And we can't let this one thing break this entire community down. Like I said, there's a lot of things. We're not just talking about Muskegon County either. We're also talking about hopefully building a regional relationship that should work and could work, so that we can bring in things around that can actually help enhance this community even more, and hopefully support our surrounding community. But I think it takes time, but I think this piece right here is important to the ancillary business, because otherwise we lock them out, because we could start an authority, but we lock everything else out still, because the bill's not changed. And I think if we look at that piece, and then look at how we want to develop our community for it, that is what's, I think, where we really need to sit down and hatch this thing out.
I agree. It's certainly caused divisiveness, and if it goes through, that will continue, because we'll continue to punch. We were getting along really well. I thought so, and I think the county and the city would agree. And this is called divisiveness. I do believe that the right place is one of the drivers. Detroit's the driver, but for different reasons. And as I said, this isn't a one size, and it shouldn't be a one size fit all bill. So just with what I've been saying, let's take a step back. Let's craft this thing so everybody's on board, and I really believe it can be done. And instead of pushing this through, forcing it down our throats, taking out language that protected us, okay, and then saying this bill is to protect us, it's for our benefit, getting on talk shows and saying it's to benefit the port owners, and I get on and say, but we don't want it, we don't need it. It's nuts. So I agree with you. Let's all sit down, but let's bring in Kathy Evans and some people that care about the watershed. Let's bring in somebody that can talk a little bit about ship repair, shipbuilding, maybe Andre. Let's bring them in. Let's include a wider circle, rather than I'm meeting with one other property owner, Ron Verplank, and then it's all quasi and government officials. Of course they want it. So at any rate, let's bring in others. That's what I'm asking.
I've met with Max. I certainly understand some of your concerns, and I understand the county's concerns, and I also understand Detroit's concerns. I mean, this is a bill that they need some changes to. Maybe we need some changes to it too, but I'm also involved with a 13-county region that every one of those counties stepped up and said, we think this is a good idea. We might have something that we can help send through the port. I mean, these counties are willing to step up and support us in Muskegon and our port in driving business and driving to our port. So I have to really look forward to that. And I will say, Wimser-Dick is really a large part of that 13-county region, and Kathy Evans is part of Wimser-Dick. She's already been involved to as big an extent as she could be right now. She's one of the presenters when we brought this through the very first time to get the port, and the port was the #1 project picked by those 13 counties, and Kathy was one of the presenters. I mean, it just, I see both sides of this in a way, but I really think you're looking at this so single-mindedly that all you can see is maybe something hurting you. And we're looking at it by going out in our community and maybe bringing in business or asking our businesses to start using our ports. We're not looking at it as adding more ports. We don't need more ports. We're trying to increase what we have in our ports, and you're acting like we can't do anything. You've never even given us a chance we might be able to. Now we've got 13 other counties behind us that really want to help.
I can't disagree. May I address this? And I can't disagree with you. We all want, including ourselves, we want something for the port. We want betterment of the port. But let's do it smartly. I bet, because I'm pretty sure very few of you knew the ins and outs of this bill, okay, until recently. I'll bet anything those 13 other counties, the officials there, have no clue what's in this bill. All the Port Authority bill, sounds good, let's do it. I'll bet they have no clue what's going on in here. And even so, it's not them that'll be taxed. It's the city of Muskegon or the county of Muskegon residents that'll be taxed. So
Only if they choose.
Only if they choose to.
Only if they choose,
Only if they
correct,
choose to.
correct. If you go ahead with this, exactly. So I'm all on board. And as I said, a part of me says, you know what? Go ahead, do it, build your other dock, stick around in politics for a while. But anyway, no. So I disagree with you as far as it's us against all of you. We want something for the port. I'm not sure if Kathy is a good representative for the for sort of the green space idea of the port. Her boss is Aaron, but maybe not. So maybe we should bring someone else in. Maybe someone that's not tied to Wimser-Dick, and at least, or let Kathy present. I've never heard her present something like that. I think she's been thinking about it. I think she might have a concept. In fact, I talked to her about it. But let's air that out. Let's air out the shipbuilding. Why are we so concerned about creating a port that brings cargo in? It ain't going to happen. Go ahead, waste your money.
Thanks, we appreciate that, and we want to keep the discussion strictly about the bill. We don't want to get into personal attacks in here. We appreciate your opinion. We're glad to have you here, but I think the hour is growing late, and I don't know if anybody else has anything that they want to add to this from public comment.
Sir?
John.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon. My name is John Loftus. I'm Executive Director of the Detroit-Wayne County Port Authority. My interest, and just for background, I've been doing port business for over 30 years. I grew up in Michigan, but I spent part of the last 35 years in Ohio, and they have a very active Port Authority act. They have very dynamic ports, as many as Michigan has. But they see the value of using a public body to assist private operations. When I came to Michigan and read the Michigan Port Authority Act, I was appalled by what a bad piece of legislation this really is. I mean, the fact that a port authority, this agency, can only help a facility that it owns. When this was passed in 1978 and they created the Port Authority didn't own anything. So it created an entity that couldn't do anything. It was nothing but a marketing arm. That's not what a Port Authority is all about. Port Authority should be working with every terminal operator, providing assistance where and when needed. And that's what it's all about. You would have the ability kind of dictate how that's gonna happen. When you establish, when and if you decide to establish it. Mr. Eggers, you are absolutely right. All this does is create kind of the forum in which you can create it. You are the ones who will kind of dictate how this thing is going to be established, what role that they're going to play. And, you know, I hate to disagree with you, Max, but you were in the negotiations. I've been talking with folks in Muskegon for well over a year, including folks at Markdown. I mean, this is not shoved down anybody's throat. There were multiple hearings in Lansing. There were multiple meetings in Lansing. This was not shoved down anybody's throat. What I'm going to ask you to do is, and I think I've heard this comment from several of you, you know, let's not think small, because that's what we're doing. We got to start thinking on a much broader scale. According to the U.S. Department of Transportation, freight traffic over the next 30 years is going to increase by 40% nationally, 60% in the state of Michigan. How are you going to address that freight movement? Are you going to build roads to, you know, accommodate all that? Are you going to do nothing and let those jobs move away? Or are we going to start using our unused infrastructure? And the most underutilized infrastructure we have in the state is our water transportation system. Now, Port Authority doesn't mean that it's going to all be wonderful. It's just a tool. And it's really left to you to decide how effective that tool is going to be. The changes we advocated in this law, and it's been pointed out, you can go out and set up Port Authority right now. You can do all those things that Max is worried about. As I told the folks on WGR radio, you could have done this 20 years ago, but that wasn't what you did. You wanted to help change this so you could help people like Max and other operators. So, you know, we need to make these changes so we can actually serve the people of the city of Michigan. And you're not that different than Detroit. We've got 27, you know, terminals, you've got 4. You've got manufacturing around the area. We just happen to have a lot more. But you can still serve your community. You can still be part of that competitive element that makes them that much better, makes your companies that much more efficient. I get frustrated when I look at what we have to put up with in the state of Michigan. More ports than any other state in the United States. We put $500,000 into our maritime community. That's half my budget. That's ridiculous. State of Virginia, a portion of their state sales tax, amounting to $36 million a year, is set aside for port infrastructure development. Michigan, we're competing, we've got all this cargo generated right here in our state. And the people in Virginia, Baltimore, New Orleans, they're eating our lunch. Because they understand how important port authorities are, how important a port is, not a port authority, a port is. So we're competing with people who understand the value of a port. We put $500,000, Virginia put $36 million a year. The state of Florida, I think, pumped in over $500 million over the last 10 years. God knows how much Baltimore and Maryland have pumped into their port. The United States government just rebuilt the entire city of New Orleans, which was a lot of rebuilding of port facilities. Folks, that's what we're competing with. So if you want to address the growth in freight over the next 30 years, think of how you're going to do it. The Port Authority is just one tool that can help you address that growth. It can give you a chance to create the jobs that would go along with it. And that's why we're asking for this. I mean, it will help the Port of Detroit, but it will help Port of Muskegon. We're not in competition with you guys. The inland transportation makes it very difficult for things to come into, I mean, if I can move by water to Detroit or Muskegon, you gotta remember, 180 miles, it's a lot of inland freight, and that's a fairly big differential. So, I mean, we have a great opportunity to do things here on the western side of the state, and I want to see that happen. I want to see it happen in Escanaba. I want to see it happen in Sault Ste. Marie. I want to see it happen in in Saginaw Bay City. We should all be doing more to improve our port operations. We don't have to do a Port Authority. Next is absolutely right. You've got all kinds of organizations out there, and they do all kinds of great economic development. I think a Port Authority generally does is focus on that maritime function. And there's a certain amount of expertise that's needed. It's not something you do every day. I'll also tell you one thing that I found out, and since coming on board. I'm working with General Motors right now. My colleague in Monroe is working with Ford Motor Company. Practices that took a lot of cargo away from our ports in the Great Lakes, just-in-time delivery. It wasn't containers, it was just-in-time delivery. We shut down for 3 months out of the year. It's very difficult to compete globally when you shut down for 3 months out of the year. Just-in-time doesn't work. Well, the problem is the big shippers, the Fords, the GMs, the Chryslers, the Johnson Controls, the Lears, these people are understanding that, when everybody is lemmings and they all rush to just-in-time delivery, that creates an unintended consequence, a la congestion at East and West Coast ports, delays in getting your stuff onto rail and getting it to its final delivery point. General Motors, they're demonstrating that they can move containers into the Great Lakes. They moved one box, one container, 120-foot container, into Cleveland last year, trucked it over. And, they said, well, it wasn't really competitive, but it was only one container. But they knocked 21 days off the delivery time. 21 days off the delivery time. We want to make that grow. We want to see General Motors and Ford start moving substantial number of containers. We want to see the corporations over here on the west side of the state start using, Port of Muskegon to move cargo. And there are very, very competitive aspects of doing that. But we can't do it until we start focusing our attention and putting some of our resources into our maritime. This legislation doesn't fix all of it. There is no taxing authority in this. We're going to have to be creative and find ways to do things. But, the existing law just doesn't work. I'm asking you to, support this. Mark has been very supportive, been very engaged in all the discussions. He's been looking out for the interest of the people of this community, including Max. And, we as a state need to move forward with this thing. Appreciate your support, appreciate, spending the time on this. And if you got any questions, please.
Sorry, I'm having trouble.
Well, excuse me. Got any questions? More than happy to try to answer.
Thank you for coming, appreciate it. Anyone else in the public has a comment?
My name is Jim Riley, I live at Norton Shores. Listening to this, I think perhaps the most important comment came from right over here with the commissioner saying that we've had some discussions about this, but this is the first time I'm hearing a particular point of view. So notwithstanding all of the everyone's been involved and everybody knows everything, pretty clearly the people in this room do not. And pushing this the way it has been, and I followed statewide legislation, as I'm sure many of you, this has been raced through. Very, very few people have had a chance to sit and take a look at this. And as an example, I would suggest that we've got the Sappy property. Sappy property has been discussed for a decade, certainly many, many, many years. It's an important piece of property on Muskegon Lake. It seems to me, whether you're environmentally concerned or you've got any other issues that are important, having a community conversation matters. This is a rush job. And I would just add this final point, and it's simply that with all of these brilliant, educated, certainly experienced people who have spoken about the benefits of this port, not one of them has mentioned one specific benefit that the Port Authority could provide to a ship that the current owners cannot. Now you would think, hey, we can do all these wonderful things. You'd think they'd have an example. They do not have one example of something that the new Port Authority could do that would induce another ship to come into this harbor. And if they do, perhaps they're hiding it from us, maybe they can tell us. But that's what the community conversation ought to be about. Ask those questions, demand the answers. The fluff, we're going to have funds and employees and all sorts of things, that's nice. How are we going to get that? But if you go ahead and go with this, to me the more important word in this entire 18-page bill is borrowing, not paying back. They talk about you can't issue bonds without the ability to pay them back. Yeah, you can. There's plenty of it. Matter of fact, I would take a look. It's public record. Take a look at the finances of the Detroit Port Authority. Take a look at it. See how their budget has been. No need to rush through this. The Senate has slowed down on this. This may be good for Muskegon, it may not. But lots and lots of questions here. You've got some experts, some people that actually run ports. Seems to me sitting down, having face-to-face conversations makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
There has been several sit-down, face-to-face conversations, as Mr. Loftus just explained to you. It's been going on for months. Years. This didn't happen yesterday. But welcome back, Jim. Good to see you.
I'm sorry, could...
Mr. Garner.
I'm trying to make a point. Ed Garner, speaking of first of all, I have to say I'm not speaking on behalf of Senator Muskegon area first, because our board hasn't necessarily taken a position on this. My board chairs here today, Frank Peterson, as well as one of my board members, Rich Hamilton, as well as county commissioner, according to our board. Just a couple points I just want to reiterate. Number one, it seems to be that the feeling is that this legislation has been done. There seems to be some ulterior motive behind this, as to this legislation is being done on the benefit of one particular customer on the board. And let's throw it out there. We're talking about the consumer's property. That's the competitive thing that's been through there. So, in my discussions over the last 2 or 3 years since couple of years since they announced that, I've been in regular communications with consumers as well as others, and none of my conversations, I don't know about anybody else's, have they ever said, we need money to redevelop this. We're asking for this port authority to be established so that we can get money to redevelop our port, and nor are we telling anybody that's interested in purchasing this facility that you're going to be able to get money to redevelop this port. Up to this point, they spent their own money doing all the research, researching different markets, researching infrastructure on their own site. They got a current study going on right now, and they're paying that for it out of their own pocket. And they're more than willing to do that, as Max said. So it's not necessarily, so I think this ulterior motive like this is going to only benefit one customer. If you choose to create this, any port operator can ask for assistance through this, whether it be consumers or whoever buys that property, Markdock or Plank. It's not just for one customer. So it is fair in that regards, that if somebody has a project, they can propose it to the Port Authority Board and see if they will be supportive of that. As to some of the protectionisms in the that's not in the legislation that was kind of brought up, some of those things were pulled out of that, some specific language about who's on the board and so forth and what number of seats you get. That was purposely pulled out because it was better felt that could be that should be in the bylaws. Once again, it was pointed out that you would establish this, you determine how many members will be on that board, you determine who those are, and that group gets to establish the bylaws and how this thing is going to operate. So you can put some of those things that that people are fearful of in your bylaws, and it's much easier to change a bylaw than it is to go back and change legislation. So that's why you want the enabling legislation to be kind of be general, and you get down to specifics in your bylaws. That's really what you want to do. So if Commissioner Wilkins said, can we keep talking? Absolutely, we can keep talking. And if you create it, you want to make sure that those bylaws are the way you want them to be. If you so choose to use this animal, or like I said, you can set up something else like a port commission or a port district. It doesn't have to be a port authority as well. So just wanted to point out a couple clarifications in that regard. Thank you.
Commissioner Hughes.
I'd just like to say one thing. You know, when I'm directing this to the board, when somebody, or if they already have, purchased the BC Covenant property, it's not going to be a guy off the street that purchases it. It's going to be somebody with a lot of money. If they have a lot of money, they've been in business for a long time, they know what they're doing. They don't have to look around Muskegon very long to see that our ports are not a thriving business. So chances are they're not gonna wanna put in a port that competes with some people that are already not succeeding. So I really don't think that that's gonna be, I don't see how them expecting us to put all of our money into the BC Cow Plant port is even an issue here. I mean, I have to give whoever would buy that more credit than that. I mean, because he's obviously got money and made it by using smart sense. So I have to look at it that way too.
You know, I just want to say, I think, you know, it's good that we're thinking about these things, but I think we're putting the cart before the horse. You know, we're not even at a point of even establishing an authority yet, you know.
Right.
And you know, truthfully, you know, we could start a port without the bill, you know, but, you know, Max, you could also have competition without the bill. I mean, we're not gonna make or break anybody with this bill, and it's not our bill.
Competition